Welcome to day 3 of our daily Bible devotions. Yesterday we talked about uh, whether or not God exists, and we did not really go to the answer, but we mentioned that whether or not God exists changes everything. On day 1, we said that first we have to establish the question. The question is, does God exist? After we have established the question, we talk about the significance of the study or the significance of asking the question, which is, does God exist? And that's why we arrived at the conclusion that whether or not God exists actually changes everything. That's the significance of this study. So today we're going to go to step 3. What is step 3? Definition of terms. And the terms that we're going to define, God and exist. What do these words mean? Let's start with the word exist. To exist means to have an objective or independent reality. We mean by objective means independent. It means that the existence of something does not depend on another thing. For example, the existence of this remote control is objective because this is not dependent on whether or not I can see it. If I am blind and I cannot see the remote control, well, the remote control still exists because the existence of this is objective. It's independent of my perception, independent of my opinion. So to exist means to have an objective reality. So the objective reality, usually we prove it empirically. That means through our five senses, or legally. Maybe it cannot be observed by our five senses, but there are documents. Or maybe historically, maybe there are no legal documents or other sources, but maybe people in the past witnessed, and they said that it happened or that this person existed, so that counts as well. So empirically, legally, or historically, or maybe logically. It's something that is logical to assume. It makes sense for us to consider the existence of something or of an event because it explains lots of other things that without it others will hang. The next word, we put this in the last because this is more difficult. Because when we talk about God, what do we really mean by God? Do we refer to a what or a thing or a force? Is God a thing or a force? Or do we refer to a who? Is God a person? That has to be clarified. And because we need to clarify that, I want you to watch this short clip. I just have questions and some refutations on the arguments posted. First, about the cosmological argument. It says here that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. I see this as an argument for the cause of the universe, not necessarily arguing for the existence of God. So I don't think this counts as an argument for the existence of God. Second, design argument. Every design had a designer. Okay, what is a design? What do we mean by design? What counts as a design? The universe has highly complex design. Now, it's not yet properly defined what a design is. For example, if I see patterns in a sky filled with clouds, does that count as a design? It says the universe has highly complex design. Okay, I have no problem with that. It says the universe had a designer. Again, it depends on how we will define the word design. But even if we just go with the premise 1 and premise 2, the conclusion also argues that the universe had a design or had a designer. That doesn't mean that the designer is God. Again, I don't see this as an argument for the existence of God. Third moral argument, every law has a lawgiver. Second, there is a moral law. What is a moral law? It's not, what is a moral law? You mean a law that transcends everyone, all societies, in across all generations? If that's the case, how can we be certain that there really is such a law? Because there is a claim here that there is a moral law, but how do we know that there is that codified in some way? Where do we find that? And then again, even if we go with that, let's say we go with premise 1, premise 2, again, the conclusion argues for a moral lawgiver. In all this, I think the similarity, the pattern is it does not necessarily point to God. And those are my refutations. I want to post my argument for the non-existence of God. This is what I mentioned earlier. I typed earlier as the arbitrary term argument. First, the defining traits for the term God or God is subjective and arbitrary. So I mean, one culture, one denomination, one belief defines God, and that does not coincide with another denomination's definition for God. So what really is the definition of God? It seems to me that across culture and across history, the definition is always changing. Second, a being whose defining characteristics are subjective and arbitrary cannot exist in reality. Because if my defining traits are subjective, and if my defining traits depends on the person looking at me, I mean, who am I really? Am I really existing in reality? So therefore, God does not exist in reality. In the first place, it's not yet even clarified what is a defining trait for the God that we're talking about. We're talking about God, whether he exists or does not exist. What do we mean by God? Okay, what you have seen is a clip of my class in my master's study, and that's a class of some church leaders, some pastors, and we're talking about logic, logical fallacies, and we had this exercise of arguing about the existence of God. So two parties, we were separated. We are all believers in God. We all believe in God, and we were divided into two. One party will argue for the existence of God. Obviously, I belong to the party that argues for the non-existence of God, which is what I did. So, see what I did there is that I exploited the weakness in their arguments. They posted three arguments. What I did is exposed the weakness, which is their terms were not clarified. Their arguments can be good, and we will discuss those arguments in the succeeding weeks. But those arguments, they presented it in a way that the terms were not clarified. So I exploited that. I used that against them. And then I offered my counter argument. See, that's the thing. You can't just say, I believe in God. You can't just say, I don't believe in God. Whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, you have to pose your argument. What is your argument for the existence of God or for the non existence of God? What we're trying to achieve here is to equip you with the ability to argue for what you believe. And I'm teaching you now the arguments for the existence of God. At least we're going in that direction. You know that. So we have already defined the term exist, being objective, not subjective. But then now we go to the existence of God. So what do we mean by God? This is my definition. God is the logical cause or origin of the universe and mankind. So we're looking for a creator. When we say God, when we mention God, we are actually looking for a creator, a logical creator. We're looking for, this is the similarity across the definition of God. So when we talk about Thor is not a creator. So definitely, even though a literature will call him God, Thor, Loki as God, they are not creators, so they do not apply to this definition of God. The Greek gods, as long as they're not creator, well, they will not apply to the definition of God. So we're looking for a God believed by religions to be the logical cause or origin of the whole universe and mankind. And now the question is, does this God exist? So we will continue further in our studies.